Imagine cruising down a dark, lonely highway with nothing but miles of empty road ahead, until suddenly you're not alone. Strange figures appear in your rearview mirror, footsteps circle your truck in the dead of night, and eerie presences haunt every mile. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to explore 5 of the most disturbing trucker horror stories. Truckers are the unsung heroes of the road. They drive alone for many hours of the day and night along long and very straight stretches of highway, but sometimes they encounter strange happenings that are far away from being explainable. 1. The Phantom Hitch-Hiker. It was a dark, misty night somewhere in a remote area of the New Mexico highway. A trucker named Pete had been driving for hours. Just as he was about to hunker down and prepare himself for pushing through for the next hour, he saw something up ahead. As he drew nearer, he saw a woman all alone by the side of the road, extending her thumb out, signaling a ride. Pete was taken aback. He never picked up hitchhikers, and not this late at night, but there was a desperate quality about her. He slowed down and pulled over. She pulled herself up into the truck. Her face was expressionless. She didn't turn to him. The cab went silent. Pete spoke up, trying to break through the silence, but got no response from her. Pete tried again, but in vain. He could not shake this feeling that something was seriously wrong. Another couple of miles with the silence, and Pete looked across at her again. As he looked, his heart almost stopped. It was an empty seat. He slammed on the brakes and his hands started shaking. Thoughts clamored through his head. How could she disappear? Drenched in sweat, heart hammering in his chest, Pete reached over to the CB and hailed any trucker that might be in earshot. "This here's Pete on Route 285. I just picked up a hitchhiker, and she's gone. She just disappeared." His voice was still trembling. Another trucker came over the radio, his voice calm. "You've met her? The Phantom Hitch-Hiker. You're not the first, buddy. Drivers have been seeing her for decades along that stretch of road. She never says a word and she always disappears." Pete's skin crawled. He still continued to look over to the passenger seat. To this day, Pete refuses to drive that stretch of highway at night. He tells the story to other truckers, hoping to warn them. Some roads are haunted, and not all ghosts stay where they belong. 2. The mysterious rest stop. Jake had hauled cargo for 15 years, driving cross-country on all sorts of roads and in all kinds of weather. But what happened to him on a particular night in the Appalachian Mountains was certainly unforgettable. At that night, Jake was carrying cargo as usual. On his way, he saw a rest area sometime around 2 a.m. He came off the highway and parked the bus in the parking lot. No other cars nor trucks were to be seen in the place. He pulled off at the big rig stop, shut down, and laid down to take some rest. Lying in the darkness, the air felt heavy. First of all, Jake figured it was his exhaustion playing tricks on him, but then he heard footsteps. Jake felt his heart quicken, and he sat up straight, looking in the mirrors. There was nothing. He thought that it was only an animal, but the footsteps got louder, closer. He had closed his doors to the careful side. A few minutes later, the footsteps stopped. He laid back down. There was a loud bang that had connected with a side swipe against the cab, rocking the truck. Jake jumped in his seat, his heart suddenly racing. Fumbling for the flashlight lying on the seat beside him, he played its beam out the open window. The parking lot was empty again. Jake's blood ran cold. He fired up the engine, went away, and never looked back. The next morning, Jake stopped for coffee at a little diner in the mountain town. He asked the waitress if she had heard anything strange about the rest stop. She told Jake that he was not the first driver to experience horror. She told him that there had been talks about strange happenings there. Some say it's cursed, and the strange things there can't be explained. It made Jake shudder. From that point on, Jake avoided the Appalachian rest stops at all costs, especially at night. Some roads are more dangerous than they appear, and some stops are simply better left unmade. That night, Jake learned in the worst possible way. 3. The Vanishing Convoy. It was dead winter, and trucker Larry was part of a small convoy making his way across the snow-covered Rockies. Fearing a very acerbic overnight, the group had agreed to caravan in the miserable conditions and kept in radio contact as they struggled through the storm. Visibility was low, roads were unkind, but they could creep along at least for a time. After hours, Larry did not see any more taillights of the vehicle in front. Scared, he radioed in for a status check. Dead air on the other end. He called out again, but no response. His anxiety level raised as he checked his mirrors, and the truck that was behind him was gone. He was alone. An hour later, and he continued to hope the other ones would catch up. The storm was unrelenting. Finally, after passing a small truck stop, he stopped and asked the workers if they had seen the convoy come through. They shook their heads in no and said that they had seen no one else had passed. Then a few days later, Larry found out that the convoy had disappeared. There was no wreckage or any sign of difficulty, just completely gone. To this day, no one knows what happened to those truckers, and Larry stopped driving through the Rockies in the wintertime. 4. The haunting in the rearview. Melissa had always thought of herself as fearless. Those many years of trucking solo across the country along quiet stretches of highway meant nothing to her. It was one of those nights that started out normal. Melissa driving down a road she knew, hauling freight through mile after mile. The road stretched into oblivion ahead, and another car was an unusual sight to see. She had been driving for hours without stopping. She just couldn't get it off her mind that she was being watched, but there was nobody except her. She shrugged it off, fixing her eyes on the road again, but that feeling continued to persist. An hour or so forward into driving, and she noticed a dark, shadowy figure from the rear-view mirror inside the cab. Melissa rubbed her eyes as if to believe they were failing her. The figure was standing still. Her hands crept tighter on the steering wheel. Her heart started beating faster. Melissa forced herself to keep her eyes on the road while her mind was racing. She thought of pulling over but couldn't do so. She continued driving on, but every time she dared take a look in the mirror, the figure was still there, silent, unmoving, yet always present. It was probably hours later when, in the distance, she saw a filling station. Desperately lonely, Melissa followed in, parking beneath the intense fluorescent lights. She took a deep breath and turned around in her seat. The cab was empty. Melissa spent the rest of the night there. She had her route mapped out, but simply could not shake that dark figure from the back of her mind. To this day, she avoids driving at night when remembering that apparition seemed to come from nowhere and disappeared as mysteriously. 5. The unseen passenger. Terry had always been a skeptic when it came to paranormal stories, until the night he picked up an unseen passenger. He had been driving through the desert on an uneventful night, enjoying the peaceful isolation, when his CB radio crackled to life. A soft voice came through the static. "I'm right behind you." Terry glanced in his rear-view mirror but saw only the empty road behind him. Figuring it was just some prankster messing with the radio frequency, he ignored it and kept driving. But the voice returned. "I'm getting closer." Chills ran down his spine as he looked back again. Still nothing. Then, his truck's interior lights flickered and the voice whispered, "I'm here." Panicked, Terry pulled over, expecting someone to materialize. But the road was empty and there was nobody, and the radio fell silent. "Whatever that thing was," said Terry, inside his car that night, he knew it was not human. He never touched his CB radio again, not wanting to invite any other unwanted passengers into his cab. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. Which of these trucker stories gave you chill? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes a journey that seems to be alone isn't too alone at all.